In this video, we are going to look at how to divide polynomials using long division, and just get excited because this is probably the most thrilling video you are ever going to watch. Before we start looking at polynomial long division, let's look at long division with integers. So hello, third grade math. The first thing we want to do is look at 5 and ask ourselves, how many times does 5 go into 4? Well, we know 5 does not go into 4, so now we have to expand it to 3. So how many times does 5 go into 43? And we know 5 goes into 43 8 times, so we're going to put an 8 here. And remember that you multiply the 8 and the 5 together and subtract, that's the key here, subtract the multiplication. So even though 8 times 5 is positive 40, we are subtracting 40. So 43 minus 40 is 3. Now we want to carry down the 7. And now we start again. How many times does 5 go into 37? Well, it goes 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. So we subtract positive 35 and get 2. Then we bring down the 6 and we repeat the process. How many times does 5 go into 26? It goes in 5 times. Subtract 25 and we get that it equals 1. Now 5 does not go into 1, so we know that we're done. And the way we would write this, we would say that 4,376 divided by 5 is 875 remainder 1. Now another way to write that is 875 and 1/5. So we take our remainder and divide it by what our divisor is. Now, using the idea of long division with integers, we can apply the same techniques to divide polynomials. And one thing that we can do with polynomial division is determine other factors, which is really cool. So we can use long division to factor. So with this one, we have our polynomial x cubed plus 7x squared plus 4x minus 12, and they also have given us that x plus 6 is a factor. So we can use this factor to determine the other thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to apply long division. So the first thing we want to do is rewrite our equation. So we have x cubed plus 7x squared plus 4x minus 12, and we want to divide that by x plus 6. Now, when we're using polynomial long division, we are only concerned with what is happening with this term right here. So when we're asking ourselves how many times does this go into our polynomial, we want to ask ourselves how many times does x go into x cubed. Okay, so what times x is going to give us x cubed, and we know that it's going to be equal to x squared. So we can put an x squared right here. Now, like integer division, we want to multiply this term right here with this outside term right here. And instead of just multiplying this x squared times x, now we are going to include the 6. So we are going to say that this is x cubed plus 6x squared. But remember, the key is that we are subtracting this right here. And this minus sign goes outside of the term, so it distributes to both of these inside terms. So when we subtract, this term cancels out, which is what we want, and then we have 7x squared minus 6x squared, which is 1x squared. Okay, now what we want to do is just bring down everything else that we have. So we have x squared plus 4x minus 12. Now we just continue to repeat the process. How many times does x go into x squared? Well, we know x goes into x squared x amount of times, 1x times. So we put that here. Now we want to multiply our x times our whole factor out here. So x times x plus 6 is going to give us x plus x squared plus 6x. But remember, we have to subtract the whole function out. So when we do that, we get that this term cancels, which is again what we want, and then we get 4x minus 6x. So that's going to give us a minus 2x. We bring down the minus 12, and we start again. Ask ourselves, how many times does x go into minus 2x? And we know that it goes in minus 2 times. So we want to put minus 2 up here. Now we continue the process. We do negative 2 times x plus 6. So we have minus 2x minus 12, but remember we are subtracting the whole term. So when we do that, we get that both of these terms will cancel out, so we have a remainder of 0, which is awesome because that's what we want. So now we have this term. So if we scroll down just a little bit, we have x plus 6 times x squared plus x minus 2 is equal to the polynomial we started with. So x cubed plus 7x squared plus 4x minus 12. And if you wanted to test that, if you wanted to test your long division, you could FOIL all your terms through, but you should get back to this. Okay, but we're not quite done because this term is not completely factored, and we can do that with just our normal factoring techniques. So we know that this is going to be x plus 6, then we need two numbers that multiply to -2 that adds a 1, so we know 2 and 1, so this needs to be positive, this needs to be negative, so this is the fully factored form of this polynomial that we started with, and we used it, we did it by long division. So let's work through another example. Now we have 9x cubed minus x minus 3, but we should notice that there is a term missing in here, okay? I know I circled the minus sign, but you cannot see the x squared term, right? It's not there. So we still have to put that in there because we want to keep our polynomial lined up correctly. So we need to add in a 0x squared. Okay, now we can continue with our function. This 0x squared is just acting as a placeholder so that we can keep our polynomial division nice and neat. And we want to divide that whole thing by 3x plus 2. Okay, so let's go through the process again. Remember, we are only looking at this term right here when we're asking ourselves how many times does it go into our whole polynomial function. So how many times does 3x go into 9x cubed? Or what times 3x is going to give us 9x cubed? And that is going to give us 3x squared. So now you can see why it's important that we had this placeholder term here, because it allows us to keep our terms lined up. Without it, then it could get messy. So now we want to multiply 3x squared times 3x plus 2. So that is going to be 9x cubed plus 6x squared. But remember, we need to subtract. So that makes this term become a negative. This term becomes a negative as well. And when we subtract it all, this cancels because 9x cubed minus 9x cubed is 0. And then 0 minus 6 is negative 6x squared. And then we continue to bring down everything that's left. Now continuing on, how many times does 3x go into negative 6x squared? Well, it goes in minus 2x times because 3x times negative 2x is negative 6x squared. So when we add that here, we get negative 6x squared minus 4x. But remember, we are taking the negative of the whole term, so we have to add that outside term, outside negative out there. So now this cancels. This term becomes a positive after the minus is distributed, and we get 3x, bring down the minus 3, 3x minus 3. Okay, last time, how many times does 3x go into 3x? Well, it goes positive 1 times. 1 times 3x plus 2 is going to give us 3x plus 2. Okay, subtract the whole term, meaning distribute the negative. So this becomes a negative as well. Now this term will cancel out. We have negative 3 minus 2, which is minus 5. Now we know we are done because 3x cannot go into minus 5. So our minus 5 is our remainder. So the way we write that is, think back to the very first slide that we had, the very first few minutes of the video. We want to write it like this. So we have 3x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus our remainder of negative 5 divided by our outside term here. So divide it by 3x plus 2. So our answer would be this, that 9x cubed minus x minus 3 divided by 3x plus 2 gives us this value right here. So you always need to write your remainder in this format. Okay, last example. I hope you are having a blast because you know what? I am. Just sitting here making these videos and I love polynomial long division. Okay, so here we're just going to divide using long division again. So just another example. We have 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 7x plus 6. And we want to divide that by, now we have a quadratic we're dividing by, x squared plus 3x minus 4. So even though our outside term here is bigger, the process is still the same. We're still asking ourselves, what does this first term here, so we're only looking at our x squared, how many times does x squared go into 2x cubed. So what times x squared gives us 2x cubed? And we know that 2x times x squared gives us 2x cubed. Okay, so here, in order to keep it lined up, we want to put 2x right here because it's lined up above the x. Okay, so always line up your variables. If you have an x cubed term, line it up above the x cubed. If it's an x squared term, line it up above the x squared. Things like that. Keep it very organized. So now we want to take 2x and we want to multiply it by x squared plus 3x minus 4. And when we do that, we get 2x cubed plus 6x squared minus 8x. Remember, we have to subtract the whole term. So that changes the sign of every term. So this becomes a minus, this becomes a minus, this term becomes a plus. Now, when we subtract, we have 2x cubed minus 2x cubed, so that cancels. We have 5x squared minus 6x squared, so we get minus 1x squared. And then plus x, because minus 7x plus 8x is positive 1x. And then we want to bring down our plus 6. And now we start the process over again. How many times does x squared go into minus x squared? We know it goes in minus 1 times. So minus 1 times x squared plus 3x minus 4 is going to give us minus x squared minus 3x plus 4. Now again, we want to subtract the whole term. So when we do that, all of our signs change. This becomes a positive, this becomes a positive, this becomes a negative. So when we subtract, this goes to 0. We have x plus 3x, which is 4x, and then positive 6 minus 4, which is positive 2. Now, how many times does x squared go into 4x? Well, it doesn't. Nothing times x squared will give us to 4x, so this is our remainder. So using the format we used for the last example, we want to write our answer as 2x minus 1 plus our remainder. So our remainder is 4x plus 2, divided by the term we started with, so x squared plus 3x minus 4. So this right here is the answer to our polynomial long division problem that we started with, 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 7x plus 6, divided by this quadratic here, x squared plus 3x minus 4, gives us this answer right here. So this is what you would want to write as your answer.